China paved the way for now patriots to run the territory. You get this criticism from the United States slamming China. A U.S. State Department spokesman, Ned Price, he called it a direct attack against Hong Kong's autonomy, its freedoms, and its democratic processes. Yesterday, as we reported, the National People's Congress, as expected, rubber stamped that electoral reform plan for Hong Kong. It expanded the usually pro-Beijing election committee, but it also set up a new vetting committee, which will screen candidates for the election committee, for chief executive, that's the top post here in Hong Kong, as well as the Legislative Council. When the news broke that this was indeed rubber stamped in Beijing, it was hailed by the chief executive of Hong Kong. She said she would implement the plan immediately, plug any existing electoral loopholes. And she also said that it was necessary to screen out any harmful elements in the opposition. Take a listen to this.
They are trying to politicize everything that we put to the Legislative Council, and by advocating and promoting this anti-mainland, anti-government sentiment, or even inviting external forces to impose sanctions on Hong Kong, which is not hurting the government alone, it's hurting the people of Hong Kong.
Mainland Chinese officials, they say that this will improve the electoral system in Hong Kong, that it will strengthen Hong Kong's standing as an international financial hub. Of course, critics, they say that this is a major step backwards for democracy in Hong Kong and yet another example of China's tightening grip on the territory. John.
Interesting take, that one. Okay, let's move on to Australia, Japan, the US, India meeting for the first ever Quad Summit in the coming hours. This is like the anti-China club.
It is, and it's funny that you phrase it that way, because within the last hour or so, the Australian Prime Minister was asked whether or not China should be concerned about this upcoming Quad meeting. And his response was, no, China should not be concerned because the Quad is, in his words, an anchor for peace and stability in the region. But let's face it, the Quad traditionally was out to counter an increasingly assertive China in the Asia-Pacific region. But it's interesting to note that this year, the early indications are that the Quad will focus on non-China topics. They're going to focus on trade, they'll focus on climate change, as well as coronavirus vaccine manufacturing and rollout. But the fact that these four nations are meeting, four nations who have very frayed relations with China right now, and their leaders are meeting in this virtual summit that will take place 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, is being seen in China as an escalation aimed at China. Of course, this is on the radar of the Global Times, the state-run tabloid. We have an excerpt of one of its recent op-eds about the Quad meeting. And in it, the Global Times says this, quote, days before the meeting, Japan, India, and Australia couldn't help but again hype the, quote, China threat, unquote. It goes on to say the Quad is not an alliance of like-minded countries, as U.S. claims. The three countries, other than the U.S., will probably take a tactic of coordinating with the U.S. in narratives while sticking to their own approaches on China, unquote. Now, there are a lot of questions out there about what the Quad meeting will achieve. Is this going to be just another talk shop between four very separate parties, or will this be a unified force that will counter China? John.
Kristie, we'll let you go. I think someone's at the door. Live shots from home. There's always that. Thank you. Appreciate it. Kristie Lu Stout there, live for us in Hong Kong.